Iran's president says the country is closely monitoring U.S. troop movements and activities, but will never start a conflict or tension in the region. Hassan Rouhani made the comments in a phone conversation with the Qatari Emir Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani. Qatari Emir also urged all countries to make efforts to stave off tensions in the region. That came after U.S. President Donald Trump said that he'd instructed the Navy to shoot down all Iranian gunboats if they harass American ships. The U.S. Navy recently accused Iranian patrol boats of harassing American vessels and conducting provocative moves. Iran denied the charge, saying it was the U.S. vessels which stopped Iranian boats from conducting their routine patrols. The Islamic Revolution Guards Corps has warned of a firm response if the U.S. endangers the security of Iranian ships. Joining us now for this news review is Jason Unruhe, political commentator from Ontario, Canada, and Daniel Lazer, journalist and author, joining us from New York. Gentlemen, I'd like to welcome you both to the program here. Thank you for joining us. I'm going to start with you, Daniel, in New York. Go ahead there for your initial thoughts on this.
Well, I think Trump is playing a very dangerous game. He is blustering, threatening, vowing to engage in violence. He doesn't. I don't think he wants a war. I really don't think he does. But there's always a danger of stumbling into a war inadvertently, and I think that's the great danger of Trump's policy. But I just must say that that the U.S. policy in the Middle East is an unending disaster. It has essentially allied itself unconditionally with the Saudi regime. It's given the Saudi regime carte blanche to behave as in a sectarian and adventurous way as it wishes, and the U.S. will essentially do everything to back it up. So the U.S. is really hostile to the Saudi regime, is hostage, to the Saudi regime, which places it in an even more dangerous situation. And meanwhile, COVID is ravaging the region. Oil prices are plunging to new lows. The economic devastation is spreading, and the U.S. is now just throwing fuel on the fire.
Thank you, Daniel and Jason. I'd like to welcome you to the program. So Donald Trump is instructing basically the U.S. Navy to shoot at Iranian gunboats when they're, carrying out their daily routines out there and patrolling the Iranian coasts. My question to you, at this time of this pandemic, basically the whole world has their hands full. Why now, and why this kind of provocative movement right here in Iran's backyard?
I think the reason for this is that the United States government is going through a crisis of credibility at this point. Very clearly, the U.S. government has completely bundled the handling of the COVID-19. Now, this kind of situation is not tremendously unique. I think that a large part of this is trying to shift hostilities away from the U.S. government and towards the perceived external enemies of the government. The same reason that China is being demonized over the COVID-19 without any real evidence. It's the U.S. government trying to rally the population together against an external enemy in order so that they focus their anger towards them rather than the government who has harmed them with their own incompetence. I see this as just a continuation of that policy that also plays into the imperialist ambitions of the country as well. It's like a situation where you can have two birds with one stone. You create an international incident with Iran, so you've got the distraction away from popular anger towards the U.S. government, and you refocus it towards a perceived enemy of the American people in order to justify the jingoist policies of the United States. So I really do see this as a part of a larger scheme. Plus, the United States has always been provoking within that region for quite some time now. It was very obvious that when the U.S. Coast Guard, an organization that is designed to defend the U.S. coast, is for some reason on the other side of the planet, deliberately going into territorial waters that they know are extremely sensitive, let alone the situation between Iran and the United States. But it's a very sensitive area in general, in which military vessels or quasi-military vessels in that area would initially spark a problem. So very clearly the U.S. is trying to start something, but I think it has a twofold effect. It's a very efficient way of trying to deal with both problems at once. But overall, this is an attempt to distract from the incompetence at home in dealing with COVID and trying to forward the jingoist policy towards Iran.
And Daniel, that's the thing. If the U.S. is trying to start something, what is it trying to start? Because if it's looking for a pretext to try to engage or drag Iran into a war, I mean, Iran shot down a $200 million U.S. drone not too long ago. It, carried out retaliatory strikes for Lieutenant General Qasem Soleimani's assassination when it bombed Ain al-Assad and left, over 100 U.S. soldiers with a traumatic brain disorder, whatever that is. But my question to you, the U.S. has had the ample the pretext, it's had the excuses that it's been fishing for, but it never really did. So what does it ultimately want, and why does it keep provoking Tehran?
I don't think Trump knows what he wants, frankly. I mean, I think that you're right. That Trump has always drawn back from the brink of war. He doesn't really want a war, but he's in grave danger of stumbling into a war. I mean, the U.S. Navy is ridden with COVID-19. Sailors are dying. Entire aircraft carriers are out sick, and Trump is in no shape to go to war. But the trouble is that the tensions have been so high in the Persian Gulf for so long that Trump may just inadvertently, step over the edge of a cliff and tumble down into a conflict. And as to what he wants, Trump doesn't know what he wants. He wants a distraction from his troubles at home. I mean, his handling of the coronavirus crisis has been astonishingly incompetent. Absolutely astonishingly incompetent. His behavior this weekend, which he called for people to suggest that people might want to drink disinfectant, was just one of the most amazing moments in the recent history of the U.S. presidency. So Trump is desperate to distract attention, as your other speaker said, from his own disastrous performance. But just the great danger there is he'll stumble into something he doesn't want. That is an out-and-out conflict with Iran.
Thank you, Daniel. Jason, we have about a minute left. Your final thoughts on this, please.
I think the other guest is certainly correct. Donald Trump is playing a very dangerous game, and his political dexterity is certainly within question given the recent actions that he's taken. Obviously, the United States knows that if they take a violent act against Iran, Iran will strike back. We have already seen this with the assassination of Soleimani. There will be a penalty for carrying out an act of aggression. And the United States knows that. The U.S. military generals who are advising him know that that's a very real thing that can happen. But given this president, he is very much a wild card, and one that's severely lacking in diplomatic skills. And I would question his ability to make command decisions as well.
Gentlemen, thank you both for joining us on the program here. Jason Unruhe out of Ontario and Daniel Lazaire, they're joining us from New York. That's all the time we have, viewers. Thanks for tuning in to Press TV's News Review program, and goodbye for now.